Hello, I'm your host, Sean Aaron, and welcome to Them Boys Inc. podcast. This show is a platform where trans men of color voices can be amplified as we share our transitional stories and many other issues that are relatable to trans men of color and our existence. This show is not only to amplify our voices, but to raise awareness and conversation around our lived experiences.
Hello, this is Them Boys Inc. podcast, and I'm your host, Sean Aaron. And today's show is a solo episode, and I'm going to be answering a question from somebody. Remember, if you have a question, to send all of your questions to hello@themboys.org. That is HELLO at themboys.org. And one of the questions will be answered by myself or either a future guest of the show. But this particular question coming from Chad in San Francisco was asked of me specifically. And the question is, I heard that you were homeless. What caused you to be homeless? How long were you homeless? And what brought you out of homelessness? Whew, this is a really, really deep and heavy question. Thank you, Chad, for sending in this question. I would like to say that this is a trigger warning. Well, I won't say trigger because I don't like to say that anymore based on the climate in the United States with all the gun violence and just the things that are going on. So I will say that this is an emotional warning. There are some things in that I will say within this episode that may be alarming or may cause distress emotionally. And it may even cause a little bit for myself as I discuss this. So I don't know how you heard that I was homeless, Chad, but it's a very, very, very deep question. For many years, within my homelessness and even after being homeless, I was unable to even just talk about this without being very emotional and crying a lot, and I just couldn't keep it together. But now I'm in a different place in my life, and I feel like, I would like to share this story. So thank you so much for this question. So yes, I was homeless. I was homeless actually for 2.5 years. And I was homeless in a time where it wasn't as visible as homelessness is now. So, in a lot of metropolitan cities, we see a lot of homelessness, and especially here in the Bay Area. I'm located in the Bay Area and in San Francisco, particularly, and even in the city where I live, in the East Bay, there's a lot of homelessness, homeless encampments. You see groups of homeless folks in trailer parks and not trailer parks. I want to say mobile homes, but like in certain like industrial areas parked out. You will see like blocks and blocks of like motorhomes parked out, people that are unhoused and live on the streets. And even in San Francisco, you see a lot of folks laying on the ground or like tents. And this has become a huge problem in some areas in this country where there's a lot of homelessness. But I was homeless back at a time where you didn't see it as much as you do now. And it wasn't such I mean, it's always been a problem, but not as huge and not as visible as it is right now. So I became homeless when I just turned 18, actually. It was like 1 month after my 18th birthday. So what caused you to be homeless? So I came out to my mom when I was 18, right before my 18th birthday, as lesbian. I've always been masculine my whole life, but I won't say that I was outed. Like, I didn't really want to come out to my mom. I think it was kind of an accident because the girlfriend that I had at the time, she kind of exposed me. So she was sending like flowers to the house and cards and candy buckets. Like it's like a gift basket, but it came in like a bucket, and it was filled with like candy and chips and chocolate and all kind of stuff, right? And she was sending like these little love notes. And so they kept coming like every day almost. She was sending these things. And so my mom, one day she opened them. She was sending balloons, all kind of crazy stuff. Well, not crazy, but she was showing her affection. That's how she showed it. But anyway, my mom was like, "You only 17 years old. Who's sending you flowers and all of this type of stuff?" So one day she read the card, and I won't say the person's name, but she was like, "Oh, this is a girl." And so we had this long conversation, and she was like, "Oh, well, you know what the Bible says about being a lesbian," and like she went on this whole rant. She like engaged my aunt to come talk to me, and they like cornered me in the room and was like, this is not how God wants you to be and how God wants you to live. And it was a mess. So I lived for just a short period of time, like under this tension of like coming home, and she would have like notes posted on my door with like scriptures on there, like condemning my life and I'm going to hell and like all this type of stuff. Right. So one day we kind of got into a argument because my girlfriend, who was my girlfriend at the time, she was there and she was in my room, and my mom didn't like that. And so this whole fiasco unfolded. Let my mom tell it, I did something physical to her, but to my recollection and to my knowledge, I'm gonna defend myself, and I don't remember doing anything physical to my mom because at the same time I was upset, but it's still my mom, right? So I didn't do anything physical, but my mom got really upset. So she called the police. And I remember the police coming to the home, and just you calling the police on your child is, especially now, it's like that's not the first thing that you should do. You should never get, because we all know like how that could end up, with police being called and being involved in situations that is a family matter. And sometimes it doesn't unfold in a way that is helpful. So the officer, he talked to me and then he pulled her to the side. He talked to her. He was just like, well, Sean is an adult and you let Sean live here willingly, regardless if Sean is your child or not. And so if you want Sean to leave, you would have to do a proper eviction process. So, my mom was kind of upset at that it wasn't like, okay, collect your shit and get out now. And so, we went on about our business during that day. I didn't talk to her. I think me and my girlfriend at the time, we left because it was just too much tension in the house. And the officer recommended that I should just leave and air out the space or whatever. So I left. I come back the next day, and my mom had like a 4-page letter pinned to my bedroom door. And it was an eviction notice. I wish I really had that notice. I wish I really had kept that piece of paper. Not that it serves much of a purpose, but I wish I could use it for a reference of like, yo, this is what my mom said to me. But within this letter, it was just like an eviction notice. It had like this legal jargon on it that I don't know where she got this information from, but it was just like, you need to vacate the premises in 30 days to collect all your stuff and get out. And so me and my mom have always had like a rocky relationship, even as I was a younger. And so she's always told me my whole life, if you don't like what I say, get out, get out. So she's always threatened me to get out. But when I saw this letter on my door, it just really broke my heart. I'm like, I'm a child, I'm only 18. I just turned 18 2 weeks ago. I'm not ready for life. I didn't feel prepared. I didn't know what to do. I had just bought a brand new car as I was working at the time, and like my grandmother co-signed for me to have a car. So I had a brand new car. I was like, I'm barely learning adulthood with this car and this payment. Like, what am I supposed to do in this world? I wasn't prepared. I wasn't prepped for the world. But I looked at that letter and I remember just crying so hard and just having so much anger and hurt that my mom or like a parent would do this to their child. I was just so confused, and I was, a lot of emotions was going through my head. So, but I decided within myself, I was like, you know what? I'm actually going to leave this time. She's been telling me this my whole life. And if I can't be who I want to be, I think the best way for me to be who I want to be is outside of this home. So I didn't wait till the end of the month. I mean, the beginning of the next month or the 30 days, whatever time that she gave me. I actually collected my stuff that night. and I loaded it up into my car. I had no idea where I was going. I I had no idea. I had just graduated from high school. I was currently enrolled in college, and I just was like, I just want to be out. I just can't do it. And sometimes even now as an adult, I think of like, yo, that was like a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing that I didn't have to endure all that for years into my adult life, but it's also was a curse because it set me back emotionally. Um, it set me back financially, and it was just a really, really hard time in my life. So I ended up leaving, and I packed everything that I owned into the trunk of my vehicle, and I left. And I just remember going to, I live near the water. So I remember going to the pier and just sitting down and crying for hours in the car, just crying and crying and crying because I didn't know what I was going to do. Um, so then I had called my girlfriend and she was like, well, you can come stay here. So I'm like, but your mom is there. She's like, well, yeah, of course you can't come stay when my mom is here. But when my mom goes to work at this time, went to work early in the morning. You could come stay here. You could stay here all day. And like when you come from school and all of that. And then at night, I'll leave with you and we go find somewhere to stay. Okay, cool. So in the beginning, like I was able to like get a room or two for a couple of nights. But then my money ran out. And so I didn't have anywhere to stay. So I was just living in the car. And so so she would like cook me food and like all of these things. So then her mom started to notice, like, wait a minute, you cooking way more food than normal. You know, where you going at night and like all this stuff. So I remember one day she had did something sweet and she had like put flowers on the bed and tried to make me feel special and like, you know, encouraging me like, hey, you know, this is just a moment in your life, you know, it's gonna get better. And so we ended up leaving. And so later on that evening, her mom came in and pulled the covers back. I don't know what she was looking for, but she pulled the covers back and saw the roses. And so that next morning, when we came to the house, her locks were changed. We couldn't get in the house. So she called our mom, and our mom was like, well, if you want to be a lesbian, you could stay out there and be a lesbian, but you won't be a lesbian in my house. And so we both got back in the car and we both cried because now we both didn't have anywhere to go. And that lasted for 2 years. Um, just getting emotional just talking about it and just remembering just how hard that was. So we would just park like anywhere. We would just park in the middle of somewhere and we would get sleep there. We didn't have jobs at that time. We didn't have money. Um, I stopped going to school because I didn't have a place to live. So I didn't take a shower. I didn't brush my teeth. I didn't comb my hair for weeks. I I didn't comb my hair for so long that and sitting in the car for so long that my hair became matted to my head. I couldn't comb it anymore. I couldn't run my fingers through it. It was just like just smashed to the top of my head. And I stopped going to school because I felt embarrassed. I felt embarrassed that I didn't have anywhere to stay. I felt embarrassed. I felt like I smelled because I hadn't taken a shower. So I didn't even drop out the proper way because I was too, at that time, you couldn't do stuff online. I was like, you had to really go down to the school and go to the registrar's office and withdraw from classes. So I felt embarrassed. I couldn't show my face. I felt like my breath stink. I can't go to this registrar's office. So I just stopped going to school. We would sit in the car all day. We would drive to new places. We would sit in the car and we didn't have food. So I remember like we would like, I don't know, we would like scrounge up like a couple of dollars. I remember this one time, like we had $2. And this was back when you could get like nuggets for like $2. I don't know how much nuggets cost now, but and we got the 4-piece nugget for like $2. It was like a dollar and something. And we was like, okay, so you get two, it was 5 nuggets, I remember, because we fought over that last nugget. So we got like 2 nuggets each, and then we fought over the other one until finally I was like, well, you can have it. And so it was times where like we had no gas. So I remember we used to go to like this one gas station nearby where I lived where my mom lived, and we would put like 50 cents in there. Nowadays, 50 cents ain't getting you nowhere, but we would put like $1.50 or $2 just to get us up the street to park somewhere for the night. And I remember like one time we had like went to the gas station, and the gas station attendant, I don't know if he like noticed and he knew that like we were unhoused, but I had put like, okay, we're gonna get $5, and that $5 is gonna get us a couple of miles, and we can park and then go to sleep in the car. But then I was pumping the gas, and like the $5, it went to $5 and then $6 and then seven. I'm like, wait a minute, I only put $5 in here, till it was like $20 in the gas tank. And I remember just looking in the store at this man. He didn't know me. He didn't know my situation. He didn't know anything about me. He didn't know anything about her. And he just waved his hand at me like, like, I see you. I see you. And I just cried. I just broke down and cried, because had he not given me that money, like of gas, I wouldn't have been able to drive where I needed to drive for the night.
There was like one moment where we had the opportunity to have a place to stay, but that place was going to be all the way in Texas. So my girlfriend at the time, she had a friend who lived in Texas, and her friend's mom was very accepting, because her friend also identified as lesbian, but her mom was very open and accepting and loving. And she found out that we were homeless and told her daughter, which was my girlfriend at the time's friend, to tell them to come down here. I got a big house here, and I got a room where they could stay, and we wouldn't have to be in a car. And so remember, I told you that my grandmother co-signed for me to have this car. So I remember I hadn't talked to my mom in a while, but I remember calling my grandmother and saying, "Hey, I have somewhere to go, but I'm gonna drive the car to Texas." And I remember my grandmother saying, "My name is on that car. You're not taking that car to Texas." And I was like, "Well, how am I supposed to get there?" She was like, I don't know, but I know as long as my name is on that car, you're not taking that car to Texas." So that was very like disheartening, and like another moment of like crying a lot, because it was like, okay, now we finally have somewhere to go. Somebody's finally offering us a space, but all we have to do is get there. But if I don't have a car, we can't get there. All of my belongings are in the trunk. So like what are we to do? So I remember we was like, okay, well, let's try to find a car. Let's go try to buy another car. I don't know why we thought that was a good idea, especially with no job, no money, but it was like the only other option that we can do. So I remember like trying to get a loan, and then finally I got a loan approved, which was a predatory loan, because they shouldn't have been loaning me money, and it was high interest rates, and they pretty much preyed on me. So I went down. I had to drive really far, like an hour away, to this like car lot, and I got a car, which by the way they sold me was a lemon. It was just, by the time I took it off the lot, it was already damn near breaking down. But I had no choice. Like I had to adapt, and I had to do what I had to do. So I remember I drove the new car. Well, it wasn't a new car, but it was the car that I had just got. And then my girlfriend drove my new car down, and I remember taking it back to parking it in front of my grandmother's house and just leaving it there. And so I transferred all of the stuff from the trunk of that car into the other car, the new car that we had now. That car was much bigger, so I could put more stuff in the trunk. But then I'm like, okay, but now we got a raggedy car. So it's no way we gonna be going to Texas. Like we wouldn't even make it up the road in this vehicle. So that was out of the question. And so then we never made it to Texas. So it was like, okay, well now we still on the street. So long story short, I remember one night, it was just after about a year and a half of this, of just like not washing up and like not brushing my teeth. We sat in the car one night by the water, and we just both were just like crying. She couldn't believe that her mom did what she did to her. And I mean, I kind of like, wait,
believe what my mom had did to me. But it was just that point where we just thought, you know what? Fuck it. We just gonna take our lives. And I remember like crying so hard in the car because I know I didn't want to die. I didn't want to be here. I did not want to be here, but I didn't know when that was going to be over. I didn't know when I was going to be out of it. I didn't know how it was going to end. I didn't know. I was still young. I didn't know life. I didn't, I just got out of high school, right? I felt like I was fairly popular in high school. I played sports in high school. I was very involved in like student activities. So I had a lot of friends, like a lot of people knew me. But when I was homeless, I completely stopped talking to everybody that I knew. I never reached out for help because I was so embarrassed. And people were going to college and people were doing things with their lives and moving out of their families' homes and starting their life. And here I was struggling. And so me and her sat there and we were like, you know what? This is it. I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to do life anymore. If this is what life is going to be like for me, I don't want to be here. And I remember just us sitting in the car and crying so hard and holding each other. And
I believe like I cried so much during this time, during the whole time, like in the car, like during this particular incident and just in general, like during the time of being homeless, unhoused, I cried so much. And it's one of the reasons why I rarely cry today. And I really believe in crying is good for the soul. And, people should let out their emotions. But I know like sometimes people ask me like, why are you being so hard? It's okay. Show your emotions. You could cry. But I think like me crying, it just show to me, it takes me back to those moments life wasn't when life wasn't looking up, like when life was bad. Like it takes me back to that time when I was helpless and I was in a bad place and I was suicidal and like I was just having a hard time in life. So sometimes like me not crying now is not because I want to be tough, but it's because it takes me and it reminds me of a time when it was really, really hard in my life. And I know what crying, that release of like what crying during that hard time felt like. And so sometimes like I reserve myself from crying because I don't want my mind to kind of like take me back to that times of like when I really, really was crying, like really, really hard, uncontrollable, and like my emotions were all over the place. So I won't say what we were going to do, um, but we had made up in our minds that we were going to do it and we were going to die together. And then not because we loved each other that much, but it was because we were like both in these situations that we didn't know how we were going to get out of, and this was like the only way to get out of it. And we cried so hard. We were like toddlers. We cry, our toddlers cry so hard they just fall asleep. We cried so hard and so long that we fell asleep. And I don't know, like, I'm not really a religious person, but I won't say God, but I'll say some divine intervention kind of like woke me up out of my sleep. And the words that I heard in my mind was, no, you're not going to do that because there is something greater in this world for you to do and to accomplish. And I remember waking up and looking in my hands with what I was going to end my life with and realize that it wasn't, that wasn't it. That wasn't the end of my story. That wasn't the end of my journey. And there was so much more to my life that I didn't know yet because I was so young that I hadn't experienced yet. But I was willing to wait just a little bit longer to see that unfold. I remember just being so upset. I didn't talk to my mom for years after this. I didn't talk to any of my family really for years. I became estranged from religion and church because I felt like if my mom was this religious person, where was her God-like behavior? And why did she not come to the rescue and the aid of her child? A lot of things. But we decided at that moment that we weren't going to end our lives. And we cried again. Spending time in the car was a lot of crying. I did a lot of crying. We did more crying than we actually did talk.
So for 2 years, I didn't really even talk. There was nothing to talk about. It's not like how you doing today or what you doing today. Or we in this car. We just sitting here driving around and trying to make ends meet and trying to survive. So there was nothing really to talk about. But I remember that she used to babysit this little boy who was her neighbor at the time. And her dad really trusted us. And his son really loved us. He was like 4 years old. And he would be with us all the time. His dad didn't know that we were homeless. He just thought that we were spending the night at my house. He had no idea. So the next question is, how long were you homeless? So I was homeless 2.5 years. So I always say 2 years because 2 of the years was spent in the car, literally in the car. And so the last question from Chad was, what brought you out of homelessness? So this is what brought me out. So this little boy, his dad, oh man, I won't say his name. I don't want to, but this man was a godsend. Like, I'm indebted. My life, I feel that shift came from him and his love for us. And he didn't know me. I wasn't his neighbor. She was his neighbor. But he knew that we loved his child, and he loved to see how we interacted with his child. We used to pick him up from school. We used to take us. So his dad didn't know we were homeless. So his son was sleeping in the car with us at night. And so one day we were leaving his dad's house with him. And so we were getting our blankets out of the trunk and laying the car, setting the car up to put the blankets in the window. So we have blankets covering us while we were asleep and all that. And so his dad's girlfriend came out, and she was just coming to, give us something to eat to take home with us. And she starts with the blankets, and she was like, wait a minute, what y'all doing? She was like, I know y'all not homeless. And I was like, please don't tell his dad. Please, please, please. She was like, if y'all don't come in this house right now and stay in this house with us, I'm telling him. We we both looked at each other like, oh no, we can't let him know. Oh no, no, no. And it wasn't that he would be upset or anything because he knew his son was safe. It was that we was just ashamed and embarrassed. And so we went in the house, and she told his dad, hey, they staying with us now. And so he didn't say nothing about it. He was like, oh, okay. So that was how I came out of, I won't say I came out of being unhoused at that moment. I wasn't in the car per se, but I still didn't have like a place to live for me. And so he ended up letting us stay in his couch. So we stayed on his couch for 6 months. And we were able to take a shower. We were able to get food into our stomachs. And it was a time where we were able to turn that around. And so I remember going to the barbershop. So now it was time that I needed to go to the barbershop. And this is my first time going to the barbershop as an adult. And I used to go to barbershops when I was younger. I would take my brothers to get their haircuts. But this was the first time as an adult that it was my time to get my haircut. And I remember sitting in the barbershop, and when it was time to get my haircut, I had a do-rag on. So nobody knew what my head looked like, but it was a mess, and it was matted, and it was just, and I remember sitting in the barber chair, and I took my do-rag off, and people started to laugh at me. And I started to cry. And I was like, these people don't even know where I've been. They don't know my situation. And I remember the barber turned me around in his chair and looked at me eye to eye. And he was like, don't give a fuck what nobody say. He's like, I'm going to give you the best haircut you ever had. And he was just pretty much like, fuck them, And I remember just having that confidence, like, wow, you don't even know me. And, and he cut my hair, and I felt so good, like finally get like this weight off of me of years of crying and years of pain and years of hair that's just stuck to my head. Finally getting it off and feeling relieved. It's like feeling like I'm a new person and feeling like I had a new beginning and a new start, and that was like the new start to my hair too, actually, because I've been bald ever since. So like after getting this haircut, I felt like I could take on the world. Like I had been staying in a place for a couple of months now. I was able to eat on a regular basis. I was able to take a shower on a regular basis. Now I had my hair cut. So now I started to feel like, okay, now I can like try to
be a normal person now. So I remember like trying to find jobs. And so I had got a part-time job, and then I was just working a little bit. I was like working a night shift. And so I wasn't making good money, but I was making enough money where it was consistent where I could buy food, and like I could buy my personal hygiene items, and like I could get my hair cut on a regular basis. And so we was like, okay, well, we was still young, right? So we didn't know like what we could and couldn't do. Like we had no idea. We were never taught like you have to have established credit, and like you have to have a job, and like to get an apartment, and like you have to make 3 times the rent, or like whatever it was at that time, or how much more you had to make for the rent. But we would drive around and like looking for places to stay. So I remember we came up on this one apartment. So I had a part-time job, but it wasn't like a consistent part-time job. So it was like maybe I got a job one day, or like maybe I got to work 2 days. So it's like pretty much like an on-call thing. So technically I had a job, but not really like steady income. So we had found this one apartment, and so we went into the rental office, and we were telling the lady in the rental office. So remember, like, even with the person with the gas, like certain people were put in our lives to like give us these little small blessings, right? So we were asking the lady, like, we're homeless and like we don't have anywhere to stay. And like, so she was showing us around the apartment complex, and she showed us like the 1 bedroom and like the studio apartments. And so, oh yeah, we like, oh yeah, like we want to get the studio apartment. So we went back to the rental office. And so the lady was like, okay, so where do you all work? And like, what's your income? And we just see pay stubs and bank account information. And we both was like, we got sad. And my girlfriend, she started crying. And she's like, we don't have any of those things. And we like really want a place to stay. And we're tired of being homeless. And we've been living in the car. And I remember the lady, her and her husband were like the property managers. So she went in the back and talked to him about it. And then he came back and looked at us. And then he kind of just like told her, well, whatever you want to do. And so she looked at us and was like, I'll let you stay here. I'll give you this apartment. I'll sign a lease with you all. She was like, please don't disappoint me, because I don't want to lose my job behind this, because I'm not supposed to do this. She was like, but y'all gotta get jobs. Y'all have to get jobs to pay the rent. I can't just let you stay here for free. Oh my God, we was so happy. Once again, we crying again. We get into the car, we both start just crying and crying. I'm like, oh my God, this is finally over. Now we have our own place. We have our own place. But then we were like, well, we don't have jobs. What are we gonna do? So I remember we moved in, we signed the lease, we got into the apartment. We didn't have nothing. Like we didn't have dishes, we didn't have anything. We had just enough money to like buy us some towels and like toiletry items, and then we got a air mattress. So we had air mattress. So obviously we had to get covers and blankets and stuff for air mattress. And so, 1 week went by, 2 weeks went by, 3 weeks went by, still trying to look for jobs. We didn't have any success. And so now it's like, okay, after this fourth week, the next month, then the rent is going to be due. We didn't know what we were going to do. And then, that fourth week, we started to cry again. Oh my God, we're going to be back on the street, back in the car. We can't go back to his house anymore. Her old neighbor's house. Like we just can't. Like we can't tell him we failed. Like we felt so broken. Like no, this we just can't. So I remember like, once you don't pay your rent on the first, then by the third, they got that pay or quit notice on your door. Like if you don't pay your rent, you got to get out. So I remember leaving the apartment on the third and seeing that notice on our door. And that was just devastating. I'm like, oh my God, we're gonna be homeless again. Like living in a place just feels so good. So we both went down to the rental office crying again, like always crying. And the lady said, I can't help y'all. I told y'all needed to find jobs. I need to show that y'all have jobs, as I need to show proof of employment with your pay stubs. And I was like, well, we've been looking for jobs and nobody will hire us. And so she told me, she said, go down to, it was like this employment office. It was like an employment office where you go down and like businesses would come in and do orientations, and they would like hire people on the spot, or like you could use the computer to like
build your resume and like send resumes out to jobs. They would like have a job board where you could look at job postings and apply and like know who you can fax your resume to and like all this stuff. So I went there. So I was asking the receptionist, like, I really need a job and I need somebody that's going to hire right now. And she was like, "Oh, that's I actually have something like that, and it's this place they hire people on the spot. But all you got to do is fill like this quick little survey online, and they're calling people like right away." She was like, "I know several people that just got hired at this place." So I was like, "Oh, cool." So got on the computer, filled out the slow application, and I was excited, but then not really excited because I'm like, I've been disappointed before. Like people won't hire me, and I don't have experience. I'm still young. Nobody want to hire me. But 2 days later, this company called me back, and so they were like, "Come down." So I went down. It was like a whole day event, like this whole hiring event day. It was like I was there for like 12 hours. You had to take like all these like written tests, verbal interviews and all kind of stuff for 12 hours. And so then after that, they were like, "You got the job." What? I got the job? Now, mind you, like this job was godsend because at that time it was a company that was taking over a federal contract. So they were rolling out all of the old employees and bringing all of us in, which were new employees. So they brought in over, man, like a couple thousand people that they hired all at once. And so within this rollout period, it was like mandatory overtime every day. So I worked 12 hours a day for 3 months straight, 7 days a week. So 12 hours a day, 7 days a week for 3 months straight, no breaks. That moment saved my life. Like that paycheck, I was able to pay my rent. I was able to pay the next month's rent. I was able to get furniture in the house. And we only had like a little studio. So I was able to get a bed. I was able to get like a small like couch. And that set my life in a different trajectory. And a little bit of truth is that was 20 years ago. And I still have that same job right now, my full-time job. Not because I wanted to be there long, but I realized that blessing in that. And it just so happened that I just so happened to be there that long. But that job saved my life. And nobody knew. Nobody knew at that job. A lot of people still don't know. I've only told like a couple people when I first started working there. I just tried to keep my head down. I just wanted to earn money to make sure that I was never on the street again. So I never really told anybody, "Hey, yo, this is my story. This is where I'm coming from." But in the back of my mind, I was like the best employee because I didn't want to lose this job, and I didn't want to give them no reason to let me go. Like I wanted to do everything I could because I didn't want to be back on the street again. Being homeless was definitely something that shifted and shaped who I am today as a person. I think like a lot of times, and that's one thing, like when they were laughing at me in the barbershop, and that's one thing that I want to say to folks is like, you don't know somebody's story. People think, oh, homeless people, they all on drugs or they all crazy. I mean, I won't say crazy, but they're mentally unstable. That's why they're homeless. Oh, like sometimes things happen to folks. And maybe, yes, some people are dependent on substances when they're homeless, but you also just don't know somebody's story or like where they came from and like just their story in general, of like how many people are homeless and why they're homeless. According to an article in the National Center of Transgender Equality, it says 1 in 5 transgender people in the United States has been discriminated when seeking home, and more than 1 in 10 have been evicted from their homes because of their gender identity. Homelessness is also a critical issue for transgender people. 1 in 5 transgender individuals have experienced homelessness at some point in their lives. Family rejection and discrimination and violence have contributed to a large number of transgender and other LGBTQ plus identified youth who are homeless in the United States. An estimated 20 to 40% of the more than 1.6 million homeless youth. That's a lot of people. And that's a lot of folks that are out because of their gender identities. And so it's like, it's horrible. That was definitely an experience that I would never wish on anybody, like not even my worst enemy. Of that drastically changed me for the rest of my life. And I'm glad that that moment in the car that I didn't end my life. I'm glad that I kept pressing forward. I'm glad that I didn't know what was ahead, but I'm glad that I saw glimpse of something that I am to become in the future. And I'm glad that I stuck around to see the world and to see things manifest in the ways that they have. And that's also like encouragement for other folks to embrace this journey and to not give up on your journey, and to not give up on finding love, or not to give up on finding acceptance and happiness and chosen family if it's not your own blood relatives. Like, there is hope. There is ways to that you can see. I know, like, you may not see it now, and it may be rough and it may be cloudy, but every cloudy day ends with a little bit of sunshine at some point. So thank you, Chad, for that question. That really hit home for me. If there are is anyone that would like to discuss homelessness, anyone that experienced homelessness that would like to be a guest on the show, or we could talk about it in depth and to talk about your story and how you came out of it, I would love to have someone on the show where we can discuss it and talk about resources and places and things that people can reach out to if they are experiencing homelessness. So Chad from San Francisco, thank you for that question. I really appreciate it. And thank you for listening to this episode. My name is Sean Aaron. Take care.
Thank you for listening to today's show. Once again, I'm your host. My name is Sean Aaron. Be sure to like, be sure to share this show out with folks in your networks. If you would like to connect with us, be sure to follow us on Instagram or Facebook. You can also visit our website at themboys.org. That's DEMBOIS.org. If you think you would make a great guest on this show, or maybe you have a question for myself or a future guest that you would like to hear answered on the show, please send an email to hello@themboys.org. That's HELLO@themboys.org. Until next time, take care.